Seems pretty unique to Lech Lecha. Okay, so yes, as per the previous weeks, we're going to be focusing on the Ramban. We're going to be focusing on the Ramban. It's all in there. Few ideas, a few ideas which hopefully will be we can learn through. And as we've done previous weeks, the idea is to try and actually understand something about the way the key and great Rishonim understood the parasha and learn something about their methodology. We're already beginning to see how the Ramban especially often begins quoting Rashi and the Ibn Ezra, very close to that's often his style, and then very often goes in a different direction. So if you look at the beginning of the parasha, the Ramban struggles with the journey, the geography. What is going on with the geography? And many Mefarshim struggle with this. In other words, when did Avram leave? Where did he leave from? Where did he start from? It's all very confusing because at the end of Parashas Noach, we know that Avram left somewhere, right? So he left somewhere and he went with Terach, and then it says Lech Lecha. So what is Lech Lecha? So the Ramban at the beginning, won't see it all inside, but the Ramban says he brings firstly Rashi and then the Ibn Ezra. It's the second Ramban on the parasha where it says Mi'artzcha Mimeladetucha. First he says he brings Rashi. And Rashi asks the question, what do you mean he's already left? So Rashi says that this command is basically go further. Okay? This is go further. That's what it means, right? So this is the Rashi is actually on the neck towards the end of the pasuk. Okay. The Ibn Ezra says that it means in the past. Ukvar Omar Hashem. El Avram Lech Lecha mi'artzecha. In other words, that these words, according to Ibn Ezra, are effectively out of order in the Torah. You understand? Rashi says it means there are two stages of the journey. The first stage is Terach, moving with Avram, and the second stage is he only gets as far as Choron, by Yomas Terach b'Choron, the end of last week's parasha. And Avram, even though as Rashi says, he actually died afterwards. Yeah, Rashi, the death of Terach was actually a long time afterwards. Rashi explained, but either way, leave that aside. According to Rashi, there's a two-stage journey. There's Terach to Choron with Avram, right? And then Avram goes from there further. The Ibn Ezra understands that the instruction, the command of Lech Lecha was actually said to Avram earlier when he was still in Ur Kasdim. It's just that the Torah waits until now to spell it out. Says the Ramban, right? If you can see, it's about 5 lines into the Ramban. Everyone has different editions. I can't really point to you where exactly it starts. He says, Ve'einenu nochon. He says, this isn't correct from his view. You got with me? Can you see that? He brings Rashi and then the Ibn Ezra, Rabbi Avram Pirish. A few lines after, he says Ve'inez, a full stop, and then he says Ve'inenu nochon. Can you see that? Mm-hmm. It's not. Yeah, can you see it, Joe? You got it. Mm-hmm. It's about 5. It's about 5 lines into that second Ramban. He brings Rashi and then Rabbi Avram. You got? Yeah.
It's not past where you think it ought to be.
Yeah. He says, "Ve'inenu nochon." It's not correct. Ki im hoya kain. If this was the case, hoya Avram ikar nasiya mebeis oviv mitzvah solekim. That means the primary journey of Avram would be the command of Hashem. The Terach oviv b'rotzei nafshe halachimai, and we know that Terach did it. Would have done it, of his own accord. It's the other way around. Pasuk says that Terach took Avram. Yera, this tells us ki Avram achrei oviv about sosa yotzim erkasim nechas atzaklan. It tells the other way around, that Avram went after his father. His father was the one who instigated it, and Terach, right? And Avram follows him. That's the implication. Yeah, and he brings other psukim as well. The pasuk that we say in Yehoshua, which seems to imply something else. The pasuk says in Yehoshua, "V'oikaches avichem es Avraham me'eva hano, v'oilecho yoseh b'chol eretz Canaan." I took your father Avraham from the other side of the river, and I made him journey in the whole Eretz Canaan. Why doesn't it say it took him from Ur Kasdim? Right? Yes, we say it in Seder night. It's a pasuk in Yehoshua, right? And we say it in the Haggadah, right? It's exactly. So whether it says clearly, I take him from where? Eivarno. Why not Ur Kasdim? And then he brings other questions again. We're not able to go through all of it. So it says, he says basically that, just to summarize what he says after that, he says, according to when Avram tells Eliezer to take a wife for his son, it says, "You shall go to my land and to my birthplace." Where does he go? To Aram Naharaim, to Ir Nocha. He goes to Choron. Choron is in present-day Syria. You've got to get the geography right. Syria up there, right? Ur Kasdim is present-day Iraq, Bovel. So what does he mean, my land and my birthplace? Where's Avram's birthplace, according to both the Ibn Ezra and Rashi? In Bovel, in Ur Kasdim. And that's a fundamental issue with what Avram tells Eliezer. He says, go to my land and my birthplace, but he doesn't go there. He goes to Choron because that's where his family lives. Right? Basic question. The Ramban asks on these two great Rishonim. Okay? Etc. And he goes into theta, right? And he says, okay. So he says like this. It goes to the next paragraph. Okay. And he says it's all very confusing. There are lots of lands here. At length, the Ramban himself explains this at the end of Parshas Noach. Ki choron hi artso. Be prepared for a massive, massive chiddush. The land and the origination, according to our Ramban, of Avram, the place where Avram comes from, is not Ur Kasdim. It is Choron. V'shom moladato, and that was where he was born. The Eretz Avos Me'olam, and the family came from there. That was the land of their ancestors. You want to understand where Terach and his family came from? It was Choron. It wasn't Ur Kasdim. V'shom nitztavala azovo som, and that was when he was commanded to leave them. And he says there's a medrash, it's the same thing. Kachom Bereishis, Rabbi Lech Lecha, achas me'aram narayim, be'achas me'aram nochar. Different Arams, whatever, but it's Aram, which is in the north in Syria, right? So that's the Ramban. You with me? Oh, this is a massive chiddush. And also, what do you do with Ur Kasdim? We all know about Ur Kasdim. Where does that come in? How did he go? Where does that come from? The journey is only from. What was that?
Yeah, it says that.
So there, yeah, that's right. Right. Which pasuk are you looking at? Vayomas Horon. Right. Okay. So basically, it would take us a long time to go through all this in great detail. But the Ramban at the end of Noach explains this in much more detail, and he deals with all these questions. He deals with all these problems, right? That's what he does. He deals with all these problems, right? Horon has and he says like this. He says like this. You can find it if you want, but I'm just going to summarize it. It's right. It's back in. It's back in end of Parshas Noach, posuk Chofches. On that posuk, Al Panei Terach Oviv Be'eretz Muladato. Yeah, and he says like this. He says Avram Avinu was not born in Eretz Kasdim. He wasn't born in the land of Kasdim because his ancestors were Bnei Shem. He says, I'll prove it to you. It cannot be that Avram was born in Ur Kasdim in Bovel, because Avram was descended from Shem. And he says, Kasdim and the whole land of Shinar, which is where Bovel was, where the Migdal, the tower was built and everything else, right? Was the lands of Bnei Chom. We don't think of all these things, you understand? That was the lands of Chom, that wasn't Shem. Shem didn't live there. So it couldn't be that Avram's family, says the Ramban, came from Ur Kasdim, okay? And it says Avram is called Avram Ha'ivri. Why is he called Avram Ha'ivri, not Avram HaKasti, if he came from the Chaldeans? That's what he should be called, okay? And then he brings the possibility we just saw as well in Yehoshua.
That doesn't relate to where he came from, the Ivri.
Ivri does. I mean, Ivri means the other side of the river. The other side of the river. So I think his problem is that wouldn't be the most appropriate name to call it if he was from there. Okay, he has various questions, but anyway, he's got the other ones as well. You know, it says that the etc. Okay. Hold on a second. Let's just see. He goes to him. He says, okay. So it says like this. The Torah is telling us. The Torah is telling us that and I'm just going to go through the rest of it as well. He says that Avram was born and Terach's family came from Choron, which was on the other side of the river. That's where it was, and that was where they stemmed from. That's where Shem's lands were as well. But then he brings a Gemara in Bava Basra that basically says that Avram encountered problems and he was captured in a place called Kuta, which he says is basically not the land of Bovel, not Eretz Kasdim, but somewhere not too far away from there. And he says and he goes through the geography again. You can go through the whole thing if you want. It's a very long Ramban. He goes through all the geography of where it was and where this land exactly was. It was there. It was between Choron, etc., etc. And he says basically he goes with a review of the Rambam in Mureh Nevuchim that Avram was born in this place, which was this near close to Choron, and in that place they were Ovdei Avodah Zarah. He says the Ovdim Hashemesh. They worshipped the sun, and in that place the king placed him in prison. And he was there in a very difficult situation for many days. After that, subsequently, the king was afraid that he might lead astray all of the people in his land. And therefore, he drove them out. He drove them out from there. And in Eretz Kasdim, it seems that they were sent further away, right? And that's where he ends up in Eretz Kasdim, right? In the land of Kasdim. And then, Ur Kasdim, that was where a miracle was performed for him. What miracle? Then we have the Medrash which says that he was thrown into the Kivshan Oesh, into the fiery furnace, right? And he talks about what exactly the nace was. Was it a hidden nace? Was it an open nace, etc.? What the miracle was, okay? And he says that, and he goes on to explain why it is that the Torah doesn't spell out this miracle, why it's only in the Medrash. Okay, he talks about that as well. And he says the word Hotzei Sicha. Later on, it's going to be, the Torah says in Perek Tezvav, Pasuk Zayin, later on in this week's parsha, Ani Hashem asher tzisicho me Ur Kasdim. I took you out of Ur Kasdim, Loses Lecha es ha'oretz hazos l'rishta, to give you this land as an inheritance. The word Hotzei Sicha, I took you out, says the Ramban, is a reference to a miracle, a nace, right? It doesn't say Lokachticha. Hotzei Sicha is like Yitzias Mitzrayim, to take out from a prison, from a difficult place or whatever. And that was the reference to the miracle that transpired there, right? And once he was removed from Ur Kasdim, then the ideal was that he would be given the land of Eretz Canaan. The Ramban says, the Terach Oviv Avrom, Hoya belibom, Terach and his father, it was in their heart, from that moment on, they wanted to leave Ur Kasdim and go towards Eretz Canaan. I'm jumping around in the middle of a very long Ramban at the end of Parashas Noach, forgive me. Right? It's difficult to kind of point to each. I'm just reading a few lines between to explain what he's saying in this week's Parasha, right? The next one we'll do inside, sorry. Choron was very close by, he says. And Choron had the same language and everything else, etc., etc. And they wanted to go to a place where the king would not be able to follow them or understand a totally foreign tongue. And that's why it says that Vayitzu itom Ur Kasdim lo leches artzo Canaan. This is all last week's parsha. They left Ur Kasdim to go towards Artzo Canaan, which they wanted to get to because it was far away, and they wanted to be far away from this king and what he had done to Avram with the fiery furnace and everything else. But they only got to Choron because that was where the family was, and they stayed there a long time. And then Avram was commanded, right, to do that which they had originally intended to do, and he leaves his father, and he goes to Eretz Canaan. Okay. Choron, right, dies, right, in his land. And the way the Ramban deals with this pasuk, which says, Ur Kasdim, is the Ramban says that Choron was born in Ur Kasdim, but not Avram and Terach. Understand? You understand? Basically, the way it works is like this. The whole family start off in Choron. That was the place, and that's where their family origins are. That's where the family is brought up. Terach is born, whatever it is. They're starting in somewhere near Choron, right? Because of the actions of Avraham Avinu, who at an early age, and we know this from the Medrash as well, was already like saying what they considered to be highly heretical and dangerous things, like the sun has no power, and etc., etc. We don't believe in idolatry. And therefore, they're driven out. Where do they end up? They end up in Ur Kasdim. There, Choron is born. Choron is Avram's brother, right? Yeah. So there, Choron, that's what it means. Be'eretz Moladu Tor Ur Kasdim. That's where Choron dies, right? By Yomas Choron dies there, right? Oh, sorry, he's born there, and we know he dies there. And we know why he dies there, because the Medrash tells us why he dies there, because he was the one who tried to copy Avram and go into the furnace, and he dies there as well, right? You remember the whole story, right? And that's why Haran ends up there, and he fails. Rashi brings that over there in Parashas Noach. But Terach and Avram leave and they intend to go, according to Ramban, to Eretz Canaan. They intend to get to Eretz Canaan. Terach only gets as far with Avram as Choron, which was their family and where their family heritage was, and whatever. And it's from there that Avram leaves Terach and goes to Eretz Canaan. And that is how the Ramban resolves all of these different psukim and the journey itself. The ancestral holding, the place where the family originates from, is actually Choron. And that makes sense, therefore, later on, why Nochar is there and why the other brother, right? And why it is that when Eliezer goes to find a wife, he is sent to the land of his birthplace. It is Avram's birthplace. That's where the family come from. They did have a detour in Ur Kasdim through the events that transpired. Now, there's a number of things you learn from this, very importantly. Number one, you understand Pshat in the Psukim, according to Ramban, you know what's going on in the whole story. That's very important, right? Number two, you understand that the journey that Avram goes on is long and difficult. It is not simple. We think of it all the time as Lech Lecha. Hashem comes, Avram, here you go from point A to point B, end up there, and it's all going to be good. He has a whole life that we don't know about, a whole experience that takes him further away from Canaan. He begins the journey of discovery, and he's banished, and he gets to Ur Kasdim. And only then they have to flee from there, and he's saved by a miracle, and he gets towards Eretz Yisrael. You understand? So it's a whole thing. And there is a third point, which I mentioned previously, but it's beautiful to understand it. Rav Soloveitchik brings this out so powerfully, and I think it's based on this Ramban. I think he's basing it on this bit of the Ramban, where the Ramban says, and again, I don't know how, I know I've been jumping around a bit here, but it's basically the last third of the very, very long Ramban on Posuk on Perek Yud Aleph Posuk Chof Ches. So if you want to look it up later, it's about 3 paragraphs from the end of that very long Ramban, towards the end of Parshas Noach, where he says that maybe 4 paragraphs from the end, it says that Terach, Avram and Avram's father, they wanted to go towards Eretz Canaan to get as far away as they could from Eretz Ur Kasdim. And Rav Soloveitchik says that it's possible there was something inside Terach. Right? He never got there or whatever. Maybe he didn't even know what he was looking for. But Terach has accompanied Avram on this journey. If you think about it, Avram's been banished and he's ended up in Ur Kasdim, but Terach's there. And Terach goes off. And it's one of the great mysteries of the Torah, Soloveitchik says, as to what Terach's role. Why is Terach move? Right? Why does Terach, at the end of last week's Bible, why does he move? What is he doing? Right? We know he dies. He doesn't get there. Yikach Terach es Avram b'nai, and he goes, where's he going? Why is he going? So according to Rav Soloveitchik, maybe there's a spark in Terach, and that rubs off, and it doesn't come to fruition, and it doesn't, and it doesn't last. It doesn't think, and Avram is son and whatever. But there is something inside Terach, maybe, and that spark is able to be awakened within Avram, which of course teaches us huge things about how we should never put down, obviously, generations that have come before us and sparks of Yiddishkeit that have been aroused within us and waking within us. I very often used to see that people, would say they're Bali Tshuva, my parents go, what do you mean your parents got off? Of course they did. You only got to where you did because they did something. They did something. They put something inside you. Maybe you don't know what it was. Maybe it was too subtle. Maybe it wasn't. Who knows? Who knows? But there was something there. And you should never be very, very careful about that. Now look what the Ramban says. Also, yeah, of course, not like Rashi at all. This is the Rashi. We've learned Rashi, Ibn Ezra, Ramban. Again, Rashi says they went to place point A, and then he's told move further, right? So they go together, and then everyone carries on. That bit is quite similar to Ramban. The fact that there's a 2-stage process, that bit of it, just that bit of it, right? But they all start off in Ur Kasdim, according to Rashi. Ibn Ezra says there's one command.
But according to Rashi, it's Ur Kasdim his birthplace then.
Yeah, absolutely, of course, yeah. That's the simple Rasha. According to Ibn Ezra, is one command, and the Torah, when it says Lech Lecha, happened originally, and the Ramban doesn't like that because it says clearly, it says in Parshas Noach that Terach moves himself, not that Hashem tells, right? And the according to Ramban, it's just a whole different story because they went from Choron, they began in Choron, they end up in Ur Kasdim, and then they leave Ur Kasdim together. That's when Terach leaves with Avram. Okay, but that wasn't the origin. That wasn't the place of origin. They get to Choron, and Avram moves from there towards Eretz Canaan.
So because of all this from Ramban, do we kind of dismiss Rashi?
No, of course not. We have a lovely machlekas. We have a machlekas. Who is right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Ah,
It's how Rashi would do.
everyone's right.
This sounds so
Everyone's right. Eilu ve'eilu divrei Elokim Chaim. No, different pshatim. It's drush. It's not halacha. It's drush. We understand. They each explain the psukim a different way. Beautiful. That's one of the things we want to achieve. When we learn Chumash, It's very important that we don't stay on the level we were as children, and we understand there's a machlokas, and there are 3 different ways of learning this, and you've got to learn it properly.
What's Rash said about Eliezer then?
No. That's a good question. Yeah, how Russia will resolve that. Yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah, how to resolve it. Yeah, good question. Good question. Yeah. Okay. I just want to show you this. I know we spent a long time on this, but it's a beautiful piece. So if you look towards the end of, no, not towards the end, towards just a bit further on. Where is it? Where was it? Here. This one. That's right. Just another little piece. The Ramban says, El Ha'oretz Hashareko. Yeah, says the Ramban. Can you see El Ha'oretz Hashareko? It's still on the first pasuk. You see that? To the land that I will show you. Avram Avinu was wandering around, he says, from nation to nation, from place to place, until he came to Eretz Canaan. And he said to him, to your descendants I will give this land. Then was fulfilled to the land that I will show you. Right? Then it's fulfilled. And then he stopped and he dwelled there. They went to leave to go to Eretz Canaan. They didn't settle there. He didn't yet know they were commanded to go there. He went in the direction. That's how the Ramban learns, right? Their intention intention of his father originally was when they went to Ur-Kasdim. And that's why it says, later Avram says, when Hashem made me wander from my father's household, he wandered like a lost sheep. Again, another fundamental aspect of Avram's journey. The Ramban is telling us that Avram Avinu's journey is not something which is understood at the beginning. It's something which is a wandering. And the whole time he's wandering until Hashem says, you've arrived. And the power of that Ramban and the message is that although Avram says, Lech Lecha, the whole time he doesn't know. What is the Oretz HaShareka? What is the destination? He doesn't know. And maybe it's here, maybe it's there. It's only when Hashem gets Hashem says, this is the place. And there's a very strong message there, as in everything about the parsha, about the life in general, and how Avram has to conduct, how we are meant to conduct our lives. And now I'm going to show you in the few minutes we've got left what the Ramban says about Maisa Ovasim Labonim, because it's so important for this parsha and for every other parsha. Yud Beis, Perek Yud Beis Posuk Vov. Perek Yud Beis Posuk Vov. Pardon?
Also very pertinent for today.
Oh, yes.
When he was fighting.
Absolutely. Everything you learn this parsha. I felt it. I always feel something. I don't know. It's just me. I always feel something at Shabbos Mincha. I'll probably mention this again at some point over Shabbos. I always feel. I don't know what it is. We get to Lech Lecha, Shabbos Mincha of Noach. It feels like we begun the story.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Of course, we begin in Bereishis, but you begin with the words Lech Lecha, and you feel every year, okay, we begun our story, and look at it. Look how bound up it is with Eretz Yisrael, like from the very beginning. And he gets there, and there's a famine, and it struggles, and he's got to hold on to it, and he got away. He's going through the land, and there's Shechem, and it's only Shechem, and Kanani Oz Ba'aretz, and the Kanani are there. And this is the story. This is the story, and nothing's changed. It's like, just listen to the laning on Shabbos. It's listening, and it's an unbelievable thing. We are the same as Avraham Avinu. Our relationship with Eretz Yisrael is the same, right? Now look what the Ramban says. Says the Ramban, I will tell you a general rule, a general principle. Very important Ramban. I'm going to tell you something he says. With it, you will understand everything about the coming parashas of Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. Not just Lech Lecha, but the whole way through. V'inyan Godel. It's a great and fundamental principle matter. He says that Chazal mention this only briefly in a short terminology. When they said in the Medrash Tanchuma, Kol ma she'ira la'avos siman labonim. Everything that happened to our ancestors is a sign for their children. V'lochein, and therefore, ya'arichu ha'ksuvim. The psukim lengthen and talk a great length. B'sipur hamasois, with the description of the journeying, v'chafiras ha'be'eros, and the digging of the wells, sha'ar mikrim, and all the other things that transpire. And a person would think, learning them, what are we going to learn from all these things? Why do we have to have such great length, all these details? The Kulam Boim Lelamed Ala Osid says the Ramban, you need to understand every detail, every single one is to talk about and tell us about the future. Because when something happens to one of the Nevi'im of the three of our ancestors, that means Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, he, that one of our Avos, reflects and internalizes the matter which is decreed to come to his descendants. And that is consistent throughout Bereishis. That it's internalized through Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov themselves, that they understand what's going to transpire. The Dai says you should know. He called Gezeras Irin, Kasha Teitzim Ekach Gezera El Poel Dimyon. Whenever you have a decree from above, which is, I think, what he means by Gezeras Irin, when it comes from the decree, the Koach Gezera El Poel Dimyon, it's something active, something actually happens, there's an action that transpires. In other words, it doesn't remain just words. It means it will be fulfilled. It will happen in some way. And therefore he says, you find this throughout the whole of Tanakh, that the Nevi'im will do an action to take the words and make them real, right? There's a nevuah that he gives over to Baruch Meneri. This is Yirmiyahu, and he gives it over to him, and he tells him to read the words of the Sefer, Tikshal of Evan, tie a stone, and cast it into the Euphrates. And you shall say, that's how Bovel will sink. And he brings another example of Elisha, when he puts his arm on a bow, right, and about shooting an arrow. Okay, he brings us several examples. Next paragraph. That's why Hashem establishes Avram in Eretz Yisrael. For Oslo Dimyonos. Dimyon is Dimyon can be translated as an imagination, right? But it seems more like, it seems like almost like a reflection or a an actual, almost like an act, almost like, does that make sense? Like, putting something into playing out something. Yes, exactly. But by doing something happening. Yes, okay. With every detail that's going to happen to their descendants, for Hovein Zeh, you should understand this. And then he goes on to explain exactly, and he goes into this through the Psukim and how this develops. But this is such an important Ramban, because what the Ramban is saying is that it's a part of the nevuah of Bereishis in the prophetic sense, and the fact that it spells out everything that will happen to the Jewish people, subsequently. It's all there within Bereishis. And what the Ramban adds is, it's not just the words. We think of Bris Bein HaBasorim. Normally we think, you get to Lech Lecha, Bris Bein HaBasorim, that's the nevuah, right? Where Avram is told this will happen to your descendants. It says the Ramban, no, it's all part of it. Every action and everything and every detail. And he gives one, just to tell you one beautiful example he gives. The four kings. The four kings. And this is, I'm sure you can trace this through the Ramban as well. We're out of time, but just look, Yudala Posuk Aleph, right? Yudala Posuk Aleph. Look at the Ramban very briefly. Perik Yudala Posuk Aleph. Why is there a battle? Why are we recording? Why is the Torah telling us I'm Raphael and this king and the four kings and the five kings? Why do we need to know that? Says the Ramban, Hamaisa Ze'ir Avram Lahiris. This happened to Avram to tell us, Ki Arba Malchuyos Ta'amod Nolim Shol Ba'olam. There will be four nations, four kingdoms that will rule over the world. And at the end, the Jewish people will remain victorious, will emerge. And they will all fall into our hands. Right? And that's how it is. Yeshiva Kol Shvusam Rechusham will be captured, everything else. and everything that has been lost will be returned.
It's just the four Goliaths.
Yes, the four exiles. He says the first one is the Melech Bovel, right? And he goes through how each one corresponds. It could be Elosar, he suggests, is Shinar is Melech. Shinar is, of course, Bovel, right? Elosar is it's a city, he says, in Modeh or Pras. Elam is the city where the king of Yovan arises, Yito Melech HaRishon, which I think is referring to Alexander the Great, I think. And this is mentioned by Rabbi Seinu, he says, and they spread across the whole world. Melech Goyim is the Melech, the king, that rules over many nations. That's Rome. You understand? That's the Melech Goyim, the last one. Basically, this is what it is. And he brings a Medrash Rabbah that says the same thing. All the four kings. Again, that's just a small example of how this is telling us something which is fundamental to our future, fundamental, and also at the same time giving tremendous chizuk. Because what is the story of the four kings? Who emerges from that battle? Who emerged in that battle? Avram Avinu, right? And he comes to Melech Sodom. The king of Sodom says, "Ten li hanefesh, give me the nefashos that you've saved. You know, they should survive." So it's beautiful. Again, we're scratching the surface. You know, could spend hours, but hopefully that's given again a bit of direction. Again, in the way the Ramban learns these parshas. Okay, fine. Thank you.
What's the second one? He says, Elom.
Elosor.
No, he's saying
Of the kings, Melech Shina, Arioch Melech Elosor. That's the second one.
It says
Mordai. He says that Elosor could be a city in Mordai or Pras. That's the second of the four empires. Persia means it's the same. It's treated as the same. Yeah. Okay. Have a very good Shabbos.